Lucas Taylor brushed dust from his worn jacket as he stepped onto the marble steps of Silverstone Auction Hall, hoping no one would notice the patches his grandmother had sewn onto the elbows last winter, while a maple leaf drifted past his boots. The morning sun glared off the glass doors, making him squint, but he straightened his shoulders because today he planned to buy something that could change his town forever. Those sparrows chirped above the busy street. Inside, velvet ropes guided well-dressed bidders toward plush chairs, and Lucas could already feel the eyes of people who believed iron collars meant iron wills, as a city bus rumbled like distant thunder. A guard with a sleek earpiece blocked his way, pointing at Lucas's scuffed boots and shaking his head as if dirty leather meant a dirty heart, and the smell of fresh bread floated from a bakery. Lucas explained he had pre-registered online, yet the guard sniffed and said registrations were for serious buyers, not barnyard strays pretending to belong among chandeliers, while steam from a vent twisted into white ribbons. Whispers rippled through the foyer. Someone laughed about farm smell, even though Lucas had washed twice and used the last of his sister's lavender soap, as neon signs flickered midday, weird yet bright. Lucas swallowed the hurt, remembering his promise to his late father that appearances never mattered as much as action, and he held that memory like a shield, with a gentle breeze tugging his hair sideways. The auction manager, a thin man with silver spectacles, arrived, glanced at the creased bidder card in Lucas's hand, and dismissed him with the polite cruelty of a closing door, while a forgotten penny glinted on the sidewalk. "Come back when you can afford real clothes," the manager said, guiding richer patrons past Lucas, whose cheeks burnt but whose resolve stayed anchored, though church bells rang far across the rooftops. Security nudged Lucas outside, and the heavy doors clanged shut, sealing in chandeliers, sealed bids, and sealed minds that judged by shine, as a taxi splashed through a shallow puddle. He stood on the sidewalk, the city's noon traffic roaring like angry bees, and he wondered if every promise he had made was about to dissolve in exhaust fumes, with tiny clouds casting quick shadows over marble. A delivery truck honked, snapping him from doubt, and Lucas noticed a side entrance where kitchen staff were hauling trays of finger sandwiches for the elite inside, while a delivery drone buzzed like a giant bee. Hope flickered. His father had taught him that every building had more than one door, both in brick and in belief, as laughter from a cafe patio rose and faded. Lucas traced the alley to the service door, feeling grime underfoot but glimpsing possibility overhead where rooftop banners fluttered with the auctioneer's crest, though window washers whistled an old swing tune. A cook in a tall hat accepted Lucas's offer to help carry crates in exchange for a paper coat and a path inside, trading pride for purpose, and the faint roar of a stadium crowd drifted. With sleeves rolled to hide the patches, Lucas balanced porcelain cups and moved through tiled corridors that smelled of garlic and polish as graffiti colors peeked from the alley bricks. No one paid attention to a helper who kept his head down, and soon he reached the back of the grand hall where rows of dazzled bidders chatted about portfolios, while a police siren wailed somewhere uphill. Lucas grabbed an extra paddle from a supply table, its number gleaming in gold paint, and his heart pounded like festival drums, though a street artist sketched faces in charcoal. From his hidden corner, he could see the auctioneer testing the microphone, the sparkle of jewels in the front row, and the item he came for covered beneath a velvet cloth, with banners flapping above announcing spring sales. He inhaled deeply, tasting dust and dreams, and decided no guard, no laughter, and no stitched elbows would stop him now, as the clock tower ticked loudly over Market Square. The hall lights dimmed, transforming whispers into expectant hush, and Lucas blended with shadows, fingers wrapped tight around the bidding paddle, while car horns honked in sloppy harmony. He remembered late nights counting coins with his mother, a jar labeled Community Center Fund, and how neighbors believed hope came only in small doses, with sunlight bouncing off chrome bumpers nearby. The jar had grown, and Lucas had doubled it with part-time jobs, then quadrupled it with smart investment in solar shares his teacher had once mentioned offhand, as pigeons fluttered, scattering crumbs near his feet. Those shares matured last week, turning jars of coins into a quiet fortune he had never flaunted because value, like roots, did its strongest work underground, under a sky folding into slow gray sheets. Outside, nimbus clouds gathered, yet inside chandeliers sparkled like captured stars, unaware of the storm of change a simple farmhand was about to release, while unseen thunder muttered beyond city walls. Lucas tightened his shoelaces, a tiny ritual of readiness, and felt warmth spread through his chest, not from pride, but from the thought of children having a safe place to practice basketball, and hopeful notes of the violin climbed higher. He pictured cracked playground pavement back home and vowed the center would have smooth floors, bright lights, and books ready to be opened by curious minds, as distant gulls cried over a hidden river. A violinist played a soft prelude, announcing the opening lot, and as bows glided over strings, Lucas's nerves settled into steady chords, while morning clouds folded into slow gray sheets. The auctioneer welcomed everyone, praising their generosity, though Lucas wondered how generous a room could be when it mocked a stranger for worn sleeves, bringing soft smiles to serious faces. The first item, a collection of vintage coins, sold quickly, and polite applause fluttered like paper wings around the hall amid tense air. With each clap, Lucas sensed invisible walls separating wealth from worth, but he stood taller, knowing true worth was measured by what someone gave back, inspiring quiet reflection all around. Lot 2, an oil painting of a golden meadow, drew sighs, yet Lucas kept still because his goal waited beneath that velvet cover at center stage, while undercurrents of doubt flowed silently. The guard who had tossed him out now patrolled aisles, occasionally scanning faces, but Lucas's borrowed coat and calm gaze made him just another silent figure, while city sirens wailed beyond walls. When the guard neared, Lucas nodded respectfully, and the guard passed without pause, teaching Lucas that disguise sometimes meant dignity reclaimed, as history watched from dusty frames. Bids rose, gavels fell, and time slipped like sand, but Lucas felt only the thrum of destiny echoing louder with every sale concluded, while chandeliers flickered in excited agreement. He clenched the paddle until knuckles blanched, reminding himself that courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision that something else mattered more, as rows of seats leaned closer. Children's laughter, imagined under a new roof, guided him like a lantern inside a tunnel no jeer could darken, while marble busts seemed to smile. The auctioneer's assistant lifted the velvet at last, revealing an ornate marble fountain rescued from an old park, its carvings of birds frozen mid-flight, as heart-stilled and collective. The starting bid for the marble fountain began at $10,000, a sum that made several polished eyebrows rise like theater curtains. Lucas gripped the paddle and joined the opening salvo with a clear voice, offering $15,000 to hush doubters before they could laugh. A woman in a pearl necklace countered with $18,000, her bracelet clinking like wind chimes over dry soil, beneath a grand chandelier that sprinkled shaky rainbows over the polished floor. Lucas answered with $25,000, keeping his tone calm as though reading a grocery list aloud, while the faint smell of lemon polish mixed with the dry scent of dusty bills. Murmurs spread through the rows, and programs rustled, sounding like restless birds trapped in a paper cage amid tense air. The auctioneer smiled wider, tapping the gavel in rhythm, thrilled by the sudden heat between numbers. A suited man raised the stakes to 30, then flashed Lucas a sharp grin meant to slice away courage, while a single cough echoed, then died, embarrassed by its own bold timing. Lucas remembered the cracked playground back home and called out 35, imagining fresh paint covering every scar on the asphalt, while velvet curtains rustled, stirred by vents that blew chilled air across envy. The air grew tight. Spectators leaned forward, their curiosity tugging them as though by invisible strings, with camera lenses stretching forward, greedy for close-ups of possible scandal. The auctioneer's mustache twitched with delight when the pearl woman jumped to 40, her voice sugar-sweet but eyes hard as river stones. Lucas responded with 45, steady as a sunrise over farm hills, refusing to be rattled, while polished shoes tapped restless beats like drums in a small-town parade. A camera light blinked on, the media crew sensing drama worth recording for the evening news, and a pearl-drop earring caught stray light, flashing Morse code for disbelief. The suited man shot a glance at Pearl Woman, yet she shook her head, signaling she had reached her private ceiling, while someone's phone buzzed then went quiet, silenced by sharp glances. He lifted his paddle instead, offering 50, and whispers rippled like rain against an iron roof, as the scent of buttered rolls floated in from the catering hall, teasing empty stomachs. Lucas tasted the word 60 on his tongue, let it roll out, and listened as the entire hall gasped, with a draft sneaking under double doors, reminding guests that outside was just a regular day. Several spectators shifted in their seats, maybe wondering if they had judged a book by its dusty cover one chapter too soon, while the auctioneer's notes fluttered on his stand, pages flapping like startled birds. The guard from earlier edged closer, puzzling over how a rejected guest now steered the room's heartbeat, as an elderly man cleaned foggy glasses, trying to make sense of this upside-down script. The auctioneer paused to confirm the bid, adjusting his spectacles while calculators in many minds clicked and clacked, and the guard's walkie-talkie crackled, reporting nothing, but still sounding urgent. Silence stood like a tall fence until the gavel struck wood again, seeking higher offers, while a janitor paused by a pillar, mop halfway to the floor, witnessing class lines wobble. The suited man licked his lips, then uttered 70, though his voice trembled like a flag in heavy wind, with spotlights warming Lucas's neck, making him feel both exposed and shining. Lucas cleared his throat and chose 80, picturing rows of library shelves inside the impossible community center, as the rich scent of cologne mixed with the earthier smell of Lucas's borrowed coat sleeve. Someone sputtered, another scoffed, yet most held breath, waiting to see where nerve would meet wallet, while boredom fled the hall, replaced by something electric and strangely sweet. A teen in turn fetched cold water for the bidders, but even ice could not cool the rising temperature of pride, with each new number stirring a mix of fear, wonder, and raw admiration. The suited man frowned, rubbing temples as if each dollar added weight to his head, as the marble fountain gleamed under cloth folds, a sleeping giant of civic dreams. Reporters scribbled frantic notes, smelling a headline as loud as fireworks on New Year's Eve, while the Pearl woman pursed lips the color of dried roses, stunned by shifting tides. When the gavel beckoned again, steel resolve flashed in Lucas's eyes, and he lifted his paddle to declare 90, and the suited man's tie seemed tighter, striped silk now like a small, trapped snake. A gasp rolled like thunder from the balcony, surprising even Lucas how natural the number felt on his tongue, as whispers turned into full sentences, then shrank back when eyes darted around. The suited man slammed his paddle down on the armrest, a final attempt at intimidation, then barked 95, with every camera flash freezing scenes that tabloids would tomorrow boldly caption. Lucas studied him, seeing not a rival but a mirror of the fear people feel when control slips away, while outside, a lone thunderclap hinted that storms can brew indoors too. With a slow breath, Lucas stated 100,000, his voice level, his dream clearer than ever, as wooden armrests creaked and groaned beneath gripping fingers unwilling to yield. The entire hall fell into instant stillness, broken only by the faint buzz of ceiling lights struggling against buzzing suspense, with the auctioneer dabbing his brow, stalling to protect tradition that wobbled on its throne. Even the violinist lowered her bow, sensing a scene that needed no soundtrack beyond racing hearts, and a marble bust on a shelf watched silently, as if history itself took attendance. A child seated beside her mother whispered, asking why everyone stopped blinking, and the mother replied that history liked to watch in wide-eyed wonder, while Lucas's heart beat the same rhythm it used during long runs beside cornfields. The suited man leaned back, palms up, conceding the duel with a tight nod toward Lucas, with his mind listing all the after-school clubs now possible back home. The auctioneer, cheeks rosy, confirmed no higher bids, letting the moment linger like the last note of a hymn, as he smelled distant rain through air vents, reminding him of roofs that would soon be fixed. Gavel met block, echoing like a stone dropped into a still pond, sealing the sale at $100,000, while old memories of classmates studying under flickering bulbs pressed him forward. Cameras flashed, painting the hall with strobe lights, while reporters dashed for interviews, with unseen eyes of every child in town cheering at the edge of his imagination. Lucas sat down, shoulders heavy yet relieved, realizing he had crossed a line between dreamer and doer, as the security guard finally recognized purpose where he once saw only patched cloth. He closed his eyes for a second, picturing the fountain sparkling in sunlight outside a building that still lived only on sketches, while the golden paddle number reflected in Lucas's eyes like twin suns. When he opened them, every seat seemed smaller and every chandelier dimmer, for true brightness now glowed within his plan, and Pearl Woman's sigh slipped out, soft as tissue paper tearing. Seconds after the final hammer fell, the auction manager hurried toward Lucas, his polished shoes skidding slightly on marble, as though urgency made the floor slippery. The guard followed close behind, still unsure whether to salute or scold the bidder he had once dismissed. Reporters swarmed with microphones, but the manager waved them off, insisting official confirmation came before any quote, with every reporter's pen trembling like a sparrow in cold wind. Lucas offered a calm nod and pulled from his wallet a folded certificate showing verified bank funds, crisp yet modest in its plain envelope, quietly impressing the nearby clerk. The manager took it with trembling fingers, scanning digits that sparkled like treasure maps under chandelier light, while the soft hum of air vents tried to drown out whispered gossip. He excused himself to call the bank, voice low but words clear, requesting immediate validation of the six-figure sum, as distant thunder rolled, rattling fragile egos in designer coats. The hall hushed yet again, participants leaning back like dominoes stacked in slow motion, fearful of tumbling into embarrassment, with perfume and damp city air mingling into a strange new scent. A clock above the exit ticked loudly, each second a step down a hallway of uncertainty for both cynics and believers, as gold frames on the walls seemed to watch, silently changing their opinion. Lucas used the pause to sip cool water, letting the moment settle like soft rain on tilled soil, while an elderly usher clutched ticket stubs, heart swelling with quiet pride. The violinist resumed a gentle melody, soothing frayed nerves while still leaving space for curiosity to hover, and somewhere a security camera beeped, committing fairness to permanent memory. Children in the observation balcony, visiting on a school field trip, stared wide-eyed, learning a lesson that would never appear on chalkboards. The suited man loosened his tie further, cheeks flushed, perhaps recalling words he had whispered about shabby coats minutes earlier, with velvet ropes sagging slightly as though tired of separating classes. Pearl Woman examined her manicured nails, but her fingers trembled when she thought no one looked, while raindrops streaked skylight glass, sketching jagged rivers across the sky. Lucas rested the Fountain Sales brochure on his lap, tracing birds carved in marble, as if greeting friends he would soon relocate, as the auctioneer's assistant scribbled notes for a memoir she promised herself. The guard's radio crackled. Another guard asked whether backup was needed, receiving the answer that courtesy had replaced confrontation, while a dropped program fluttered down, landing near Lucas like a shy salute. A faint aroma of coffee drifted in, promising comfort yet tasting bittersweet to those whose pride felt dented, and the marble floor mirrored ceiling lights, trapping tiny suns underfoot. Outside, rain began tapping skylights, tiny fingers reminding everyone how quickly weather and fortunes could shift, with phone screens lighting up as guests texted versions of what they saw. The auctioneer cleared his throat and thanked patrons for patience, though sweat beads glimmered on his brow like dew on morning grass, while a small spider crawled across the podium, unnoticed but brave. Camera flashes slowed, but lenses stayed pointed at Lucas, anticipating either triumph or humiliation, as a cafe worker peeked from a side door, wiping flour from her apron. Finally, the manager returned, breathless, announcing that the funds were not only real, but already wired to the event escrow ahead of schedule, while flags outside the building tugged against poles, dancing in city gusts. A ripple of applause began hesitantly, then grew, sounding like rolling surf against a rocky shore of outdated prejudice, and a museum curator, seated in back, rethought lecture plans on bias. The guard stepped forward, removing his cap in apology, eyes downcast as he admitted error in judging value by fabric threads, with each tick of the clock stitching a new thread into collective memory. Lucas accepted the apology with a handshake, firm yet forgiving, his smile quiet like dawn light over sleepy hills, while a janitor's cart squeaked, its wheels echoing in a newly respectful silence. Pearl Woman leaned toward Lucas and offered congratulations. Her tone softened as she realized kindness weighed less than diamonds yet shone as bright, as polished silver trays carried untouched pastries back to the kitchen. The suited man muttered a compliment as well, voice brittle but sincere, acknowledging a contest lost with grace reborn, while someone's umbrella dripped, forming tiny puddles like question marks on stone. Reporters fired questions about identity, money, and motives, but Lucas raised a hand, promising answers after official paperwork was complete, and advertising agents typed furious notes plotting campaigns about humble wealth. He knew headlines could wait. What mattered now was making sure dream met deed without delay, with the bank clerk on phone speaker verifying codes in a calm, robotic tone. The auction staff rolled the grand fountain towards storage, marble wings still glistening under spotlights like frozen doves taking flight, while a lampshade trembled ever so slightly, giving chandeliers a swaying partner. Workers moved cautiously, lifting with teamwork, proving that heavy burdens lightened through shared effort, as city sirens wailed beyond walls, but could not eclipse this louder lesson. Lucas followed them to sign transfer forms, pen gliding across lines that sealed hope into history, with a patch of Lucas's jacket catching spotlight, stitching glowing like constellations. Meanwhile, guests buzzed, comparing this day to myths where heroes rise from humble huts. Except this legend unfolded under crystal lamps, while Pearl Woman's sigh fogged her diamond bracelet, unseen but heartfelt. A teacher guiding the school group whispered that courage sometimes wears stained jackets, and students nodded, eyes shining with new wisdom, and the suited man's chair creaked, surrendering arrogance molecule by molecule. Rain drummed harder, echoing through ventilation shafts like marching drums cheering for fresh ideas, with a distant elevator ping marking new arrivals to a story already climaxing. The auctioneer asked the audience to proceed to the next lot, but many seats remained empty as curiosity led them toward Lucas instead, while charity flyers shuffled under a vent, eager to join hands with a fountain dream. Some patrons called chauffeurs early, eager to retell the tale at dinners where silk napkins ruled and stories bought status. The students sketched the scene in notebooks, crayons squeaking over paper grain. Yet others stayed, hoping to speak with a quiet young man who had turned frost into fire using nothing but resolve, with his backpack's frayed strap holding firm, a tiny victory over long odds. Lucas signed final pages, then thanked the staff, slipping his copy of documents into a backpack patched with memories of school trips, while rain faded to mist, gently licking windows clean of earlier judgment. The manager escorted him back to the main hall, now brighter because judgments had dimmed, leaving space for respect to bloom as confetti of ticket stubs lay scattered, a quiet festival of humbled pride. Reporters again surrounded Lucas, but this time microphones approached with gentler questions about future plans, with Lucas's steady breathing grounding reporters who forgot their rehearsed narratives. With the paperwork complete and reporters still circling, Lucas asked for a microphone, his voice steady but soft enough to make people lean in and really listen. The auctioneer obliged, handing over the sleek device that minutes ago had sold treasures but now prepared to share one. Lucas thanked everyone for their patience, noting that the fountain was no ordinary stone but the spark for something larger than walls and water, as crystal glasses on side tables chimed softly without being touched. He explained that his hometown, Willow Creek, had lost its only youth center after a storm collapsed the roof 3 summers ago, while velvet drapes absorbed echoes of once dismissive tones, now softened. Kids now played in parking lots, dodging traffic and trouble, while dreams of art classes and safe hoops drifted like loose balloons, bringing soft smiles to serious faces. Lucas said he worked odd jobs, from fixing fences to delivering newspapers before sunrise, all to gather seed money for rebuilding, with the faint scent of lilies from table bouquets reminding all of fresh starts. The room quieted further, expensive watches ticking in reluctant respect as listeners recalibrated what counted as worth, inspiring quiet reflection all around. He spoke about his mother, who taught basic math at the elementary school and kept teaching even when leaks dripped onto her lesson plans, as outside horns honked in traffic, forming a clumsy symphony of everyday life. Each dollar earned had gone into the jar at home, labeled in bright marker Future Center, until the investment doubled it and hope quadrupled, with rows of padded chairs creaking as listeners leaned forward, hungry for hope. Lucas paused, eyes shining, inviting everyone to picture a place where library shelves reached eager hands and a small theater let shy voices grow loud, while gold cufflinks on one banker caught and scattered specks of rainbow light. He said the marble fountain would stand in the entrance as a promise that creativity, like water, flows best when shared freely, as the high ceiling painted with cherubs appeared to smile down on New Unity. Several guests shifted, processing this vision, realizing the day's headline was now about community, not competition, while the planner flipped pages, already blocking dates for volunteer meetings. Lucas revealed he dressed plainly on purpose, wanting to test how thick the walls of stereotype were within grand halls such as this, with an overhead projector blinking on, accidentally casting a bright square of possibility on the wall. He admitted the sting of rejection but said the lesson mattered, showing how often doors shut before questions even open, as a breeze sneaked through cracked windows, fluttering bidding paddles left behind. The guard lowered his head again, while Pearl Woman closed her eyes briefly, perhaps replaying her earlier laugh like a cracked record, while the scent of roasted coffee grew stronger, punctuating each promise with warmth. Lucas continued, offering seats on the new center's advisory board to anyone willing to give time or talent instead of only funds, as camera crews whispered about adjusting lighting to capture genuine smiles. Sparkles from chandeliers danced over listeners who began nodding, ideas popping like popcorn in shared curiosity, with distant church bells striking the hour, blessing the pledges without bias. A technology entrepreneur raised his hand, pledging laptops for a coding lab that could launch young imaginations into orbit, while a dropped napkin drifted like a white flag announcing peace between classes. The violinist volunteered to run music workshops, her bow trembling with excited possibility instead of earlier skepticism, as Lucas's voice echoed back from marble, sounding older, wiser, unafraid. Even the suited man, still nursing a bruised ego, offered legal advice so permits would glide through city offices instead of crawling, with Pearl Woman's driver texting her children about kindness he had just witnessed. Lucas thanked them all, explaining that big changes ride on many shoulders and every shoulder deserves equal credit, while the janitor leaned on his broom, eyes shining with memories of his own children. Reporters recorded every word, cameras whirring softly, while new hashtags formed like snowflakes on digital timelines, as a small spider lowered on silk near the podium, fearless in the crowd's energy. Someone asked how long construction might take, and Lucas responded that ground would break as soon as local builders could schedule. While the city's power grid hummed calmly, unaware new circuits of goodwill formed inside hearts. He shared that architect sketches already existed, drawn by his high school friend who once drew comics in the back row. As the auctioneer's gavel lay idle, content with its earlier decision to shake tradition. The crowd chuckled softly, remembering their own doodles, some saved, others forgotten under piles of adulthood, with a toddler in the balcony clapping even though she understood only the happy noise. Lucas said no pledge was too small. Even a box of crayons could color a corner of the dream, while a newsfeed scrolled across phone screens, already titling the event Miracle Bid. A retired carpenter shouted from the balcony that he would donate weekend labor, his voice crackling like timber yet strong, as the rain outside gentled, tapping Morse code messages of patience on windows. Applause rippled up the walls, sound meeting ceiling and cascading back down like gentle rain on tin roofs, with a pair of opera glasses focusing on Lucas's patched elbow, then on his bright eyes. For the first time all afternoon, the guards smiled openly, offering to train teens in basic safety and first aid, while the fountain's marble bird seemed to preen under promises of a sunny courtyard. Pearl Woman promised an art scholarship in her late sister's name, tears hanging like tiny diamonds at her lashes, as the security guard's walkie-talkie crackled again, this time sharing word of extra volunteers. Lucas clutched the microphone tighter, humbled that generosity swelled where judgment once sat, with every chandelier crystal vibrating like tiny tuning forks struck by goodwill. He announced an open house next month, inviting every person present to see the ground where hope would rise brick by brick, while the chef from the kitchen hummed a lullaby learned long ago from his grandmother. The auctioneer suggested hosting a charity auction to furnish the center, and quick nods answered faster than any gavel could fall, as a teenager live-streamed the scene, sending inspiration to classmates across the city. Lucas agreed, stating he would donate family heirlooms if they could fetch funds to stock bookshelves, with a yellow notepad filling fast as a grant writer drafted funding proposals on the spot. A chef who had peaked earlier offered cooking classes, imagining kids learning to sauté courage alongside onions and garlic, while the architect texted a contractor, asking for cost estimates before sunset. Laughter filled the hall, the warm kind that stitches strangers into neighbors with invisible thread, as Lucas's heart raced but never stumbled, fueled by stories yet to grow legs. Lucas ended by quoting his father, "Kindness is the only currency that never loses value," and the words hovered like fireflies in twilight, with the banker who verified funds secretly pledging to match donations up to 50 grand. 6 months later, the corner lot on Maple and Second buzzed with energy, where weeds once waved lonely now stood scaffolding wrapped in bright orange netting. Lucas arrived at dawn each day, hard hat slightly crooked but smile steady, greeting every volunteer by name and purpose. The fountain sat under a tarp nearby, awaiting its grand reveal, whispering patience with every drop of morning dew that slid across marble wings. Children biked past on their way to school, ringing bells and cheers, counting bricks as they stacked like building blocks of shared ambition. The retired carpenter, Mr. Dawson, measured planks while humming old jazz tunes, nails tapping rhythms onto fresh pine, as he whistled snatches of trumpet solos from forgotten records. Pearl Woman, whose true name was Evelyn Hart, stood beside a painter selecting cheerful colors, her diamond bracelet replaced by a simple red band that signified donor crew. The suited man, now called Mr. Grant by everyone, handled permits, his once intimidating briefcase plastered with stickers designed by local kids. Lucas's mother arrived after school hours, tutoring math under a temporary canopy, chalk squeaking across salvaged whiteboards that leaned against pallets. Teen coders wired refurbished laptops, stringing cables like neon vines to a newly installed router, their screens glowing like campfires in the digital dusk. The violinist taught beginner scales near the future stage, bows squealing at first, then sliding into harmony as beginners found courage to press strings. A food truck parked daily, the chef handing out discounted sandwiches stuffed with kindness and spicy mayo. On weekends, the architect chalked outlines for a small garden where herbs would teach biology alongside botany. Local news crews visited often, documenting progress, their coverage turning skepticism into donations that dropped like steady rain. Lucas kept track of each pledge, recording them in a notebook that smelled faintly of sawdust and fresh ink. He set weekly goals, celebrating victories with high fives and cupcakes baked by second graders practicing fractions. Some days storms rolled in, halting work, but volunteers gathered inside a rented tent, planning next moves over cocoa mugs that steamed. They laughed at setbacks, mapping detours like explorers rescuing treasure from rising tides. When funding threatened to dip, the banker who pledged matching funds stepped forward, covering gaps with a grin that replaced interest rates with interest in kids. Lucas learned to swing a hammer, his strokes clumsy at first, then sure, guided by Mr. Dawson's patient instruction. Walls rose, windows framed the sky, and every screw twisted felt like a story tightening into place. Passers-by left notes on a message board, sharing memories of the old center and hopes for the new one. One note read, "I want to dance here," in shaky handwriting, probably from a child just learning cursive right below a doodled heart. That evening, Lucas ordered reinforced flooring for a dance studio, because he believed wishes should find real floors to land on. He attended city council meetings, speaking confidently now, patch jacket replaced by a bright blue windbreaker bearing the project logo. Council members approved a small grant, moved by progress they could measure in both inches and smiles. Streetlights near the site were fixed, making late shifts safer for volunteers heading home. Lucas wrote thank you letters nightly, handwriting slightly crooked but sincere, because gratitude builds beams stronger than steel. A local steel company donated handrails after reading one of those letters, sending a truck before sunrise with shiny rails wrapped in burlap. Students painted murals on plywood panels to protect glass, images of books with wings and rockets made of crayons. Lucas reminded them that art told truth too wide for numbers alone, while would dust dance through morning light like golden snowflakes. One mural showed the marble fountain in action, water arching like a silver bridge toward tomorrow, as the faint crow of a rooster from a nearby backyard welcomed each sunrise. The chef led cooking classes under tents, turning vegetables into colorful stir-fries that vanished faster than he could plate them, with smell of wet cement mixing oddly well with buttered toast from the food truck. Parents lingered after pickup, some grabbing paintbrushes, others stacking tiles, proving a drop-by could become a buy-in, while an old radio played pop songs slightly out of tune but perfectly in spirit. Near the end of summer, exterior walls glowed with fresh stucco, tinted warm peach to catch rising suns, as a neighbor's dog barked approval, tail wagging like a metronome set to hope. Lucas stood back one late evening, lights from portable rigs illuminating dust swirling like fireflies around new possibilities, with sparrows nesting in the rafters, chirping critique on color choices. He remembered the auction day, how silence followed his final bid, and realized this buzzing sight was that silence breaking open into song, while Mrs. Rivera, the mail carrier, delivered envelopes peppered with small checks. Mr. Grant approached, handing Lucas a framed permit with a gold seal, joking that paperwork could be beautiful when it meant doors opening, as distant church bells counted hours, measuring progress more kindly than clocks. Lucas laughed, hanging the permit on a temporary wall, letting it watch over final touches like a proud coach at season's last practice, with sweatbands dyed in neon colors wrapped around foreheads like victory flags. The crew gathered for a group photo, heads sweaty, smiles wide, camera flash freezing the exact moment when an idea became nearly real, while wheelbarrows squeaked, their rusty wheels singing back up to hammer beats. Above them, evening clouds blushed pink, as if the sky, too, felt honored to witness foundations of hope turning into halls of welcome, as a local artist sketched caricatures of volunteers on lunch breaks, paying them in laughter. On a crisp Saturday morning, the grand opening finally arrived, sunlight spilling over polished sidewalks like gold ribbon unraveling just for the occasion. Banners stretched between lampposts, bright blues and greens announcing Willow Creek Community Center in letters wide enough for passing birds to read. Lucas woke before dawn, nerves buzzing yet calm, iron shirt buttoned by hands that once shook holding a shabby jacket, as morning sun painted long diagonal shadows that ticked forward like giant sundials. Crowds gathered early, parents clutching coffee, kids bouncing in sneakers that squeaked with expectation. A local marching band lined the street, drums rumbling hello to every heartbeat nearby, while a breeze carried the scent of cinnamon rolls from a corner bakery into the eager queue. Booths offered face painting, free library cards, and sign-ups for after-school clubs that now had roofs to call home. The ribbon, thick and satin red, waited across double doors that gleamed like friendly mirrors, with sparrows darting above, chirping approval as honorary ribbon cutters in feathered tuxedos. Pearl woman, Evelyn, held the oversized scissors, standing beside Lucas, her bracelet back to diamonds but her eyes still warm. Mr. Grant balanced a stack of legal documents ready for final filing, the stickers on his briefcase now coated in protective gloss, while volunteers in bright vests directed parking with smiles wider than stop signs. The violinist tuned her ensemble, strings whispered sweet preludes that floated through morning air like perfume, as a TV helicopter hovered, blades thudding like distant drums in sympathy with the marching band. Mr. Dawson tapped the new handrails, testing firmness, nodding with satisfaction at every solid clang, with chalk arrows drawn by preschoolers guiding feet to food stalls, colors bold against new pavement. Students wheeled the fountain into place on a dolly, tarp finally sliding off, revealing marble birds glimmering under freshwater arcs. Gasps echoed, phones rose, sunlight refracted off droplets, scattering tiny rainbows onto delighted faces, while the news center's website ticker counted online viewers streaming the event live. Lucas stepped to a small stage, microphone ready, but first he inhaled the scent of new paint, fresh grass, and possibility. He thanked volunteers by groups, builders, donors, artists, teachers, and every child who donated a crayon or a dream, as street musicians played upbeat jazz near bus stops, turning the sidewalk into a spontaneous dance floor. A projector displayed time-lapse footage of construction, drawing cheers when the audience spotted themselves lifting beams or passing tiles, with a local photographer balancing on a ladder, capturing panoramic shots for next month's magazine cover. City officials applauded, having cut red tape faster than usual because community spirit had proved more contagious than skepticism, while a small terrier wearing a red bow scampered under chairs, collecting dropped bits of popcorn. The mayor presented Lucas with a key shaped like a fountain spout, symbolic and shiny enough to rival any medal, as balloons tied to railings bobbed, tugging skyward like curious thoughts trying to escape gravity. Lucas held back tears, remembering promises made beside his father's old pickup truck on starlit nights, while city sanitation workers high-fived each other, proud the streets gleamed for the big day. He spoke slowly, words chosen like stepping stones across a stream so younger listeners could follow without stumbling, with drone cameras swooping low, revealing designs of flower beds shaped like musical notes. He declared the center open to all, free of judgment, rich in respect and powered by curiosity. Children cheered as the ribbon was cut, scissors snipping the last barrier between dream and daily life, as grandparents shared stories of the old center, voices cracking but eyes bright with relief. Drums rolled, confetti cannons puffed strands of biodegradable paper that fluttered like butterfly wings, while sunlight glinted off the fountain spray, creating fleeting halos above laughing children. Inside, visitors marveled at glass walls that brought sunshine onto reading nooks lined with beanbags and bright rugs, with portable speakers broadcasting student podcasts about community heroes, including Lucas. The coding lab blinked to life. Laptops showed interactive planets swirling under eager fingertips as craft tables offered button-making kits, pins claiming helper, reader, and coder in bright fonts. Music rooms pulsed with first notes, some squeaky, some smooth, all welcome, while the local fire department parked an engine nearby, letting kids tug harmlessly on the shining hose. The dance studio lit up, mirrors reflecting grins wider than the room itself, with scented bubbles blown from a booth drifting between stalls, popping with tiny rainbows. In the kitchen classroom, the chef sautéed vegetables, clouds of garlic steam drifting into hallways like edible applause, as a stilt walker dressed as a giant pencil scribbled wordless jokes in the air above younger guests. Upstairs, the art wing displayed the student murals once used for plywood, now framed as part of the building's birth story, while Lucas's old patch jacket hung in a display case near the entrance, reminder of the journey. Lucas wandered through every room, greeting guests, ensuring shy faces found friendly corners to explore. He paused at the fountain, watching water arc and fall, droplets snapping tiny circles outward across the basin, with touchscreen kiosks where visitors could pledge volunteer hours by sliding virtual bricks into digital walls. He saw reflections of children chasing ripples, parents laughing, and elders resting on benches shaped like open books, as streetlights, newly installed, waited to glow, their paint still smelling faintly metallic. Lucas slipped a penny into the fountain, wishing that kindness remained louder than rumor in every season ahead, while news anchors rehearsed introductions, practicing words like unprecedented and heartwarming. Near closing time, rain clouds gathered, gentle showers blessing the courtyard yet again, but laughter refused shelter, with the chef's free sample cups tempting even the most hurried officials to stop and taste. Volunteers handed out umbrellas decorated by local school art classes, each panel painted with one word. Believe, as a poet on the outdoor stage recited verses about rivers meeting seas, matching the fountain's rhythm. As evening lights clicked on, the center glowed like a lighthouse in a sea of darkening streets, while soccer balls bounced across the new gym floor, echoing like low thunder in wide smiles. Lucas stood outside the gates, closing them carefully, listening to final echoes fade behind glass and brick, with local police handing out stickers shaped like badges, emphasizing safety through friendliness. He looked across the courtyard where families lingered, faces lit by fountain glow, and he breathed the rain-washed air like sweet tea, as a weather app on someone's phone pinged, predicting a perfect sunrise to sunset arc of sunshine. The guard from the auction, now head of security here, saluted Lucas, then invited him for coffee on rounds later that night. With Lucas's mother leading a ribbon dance, colorful bands swirling above her head like tethered comets.